good evening and welcome to this week's Snap UK podcast. At the third time of asking after two technical fails on my part. Good evening to Gary, John and Jim.
Hello.
Hiya.
And hello Paul, even though you still can't be asked.
He's saving himself for the season.
What, is he doing all the podcasts on his own?
Yeah.
The podcast union means he gets pre-season off. And
Yeah.
He can't come to camp. Is what
Part of his negotiations and his new contracts. It got drowned in some other contract news though.
Who's the commissioner?
Me. That's why he's not here.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Right, actual news to get into this week, so that's nice. We're going to start in the same place as every other podcast and every other NFL news outlet with Patrick Mahomes' enormous 10-year extension. I know Jim's going to have done the number work on this, but let's take a look. What do we think? Is this the best thing the Chiefs could have done, or is it not really relevant that it's a 10-year contract extension? What do we think?
It's massively relevant. It's brilliant for the Chiefs. It's pretty decent for Patrick Mahomes, to be fair, because he's getting a lot of money. But whether it's the best thing Patrick Mahomes could have done, we'll not find that out for another 10, 12 years. So just to be clear, it's a 10-year extension. So he's got 2 years left in his rookie contract, and then the next 10 years kick in. So he's now committed to the Chiefs for the next 12 years. And he's getting paid $477 million guarantee with an extra $25 million in incentives, which could then top, $500 million of pay, which makes him the most paid sportsman on earth, highest paid sportsman on earth. So pretty decent.
So 477 million in guarantee mechanisms.
Yes.
Yeah.
The specific wording. So they're not necessarily tied in, but from my understanding, they have to guarantee each following year's salary at the start of the preceding league year. Is that correct?
Yeah,
As
that's
if
right.
he's on the roster, isn't it?
Yeah, it kicks in on the third day of the new league season, which is around kind of mid-March time each year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money. I don't know quite why, when you're being paid 477 million, how another 25 million is classed as an incentive, but there you go.
It's just cap. It's just managing the cap, isn't it?
It is, but I think from the Chiefs' point of view, it kind of makes sense because you've locked up what is your talisman quarterback, who is obviously brilliant and shows no sign of declining after 2 years of starting. You've locked him up for 12 years, and who's to say that in 2031, when the cap hit on this contract is like 52 million, that could be quite low for a quarterback by that point. We're seeing salary cap increase year on year. We're seeing quarterbacks value increase year on year. It seems like a massively high number right now, but in 5 years' time, 52 million could be the average yearly cap, the average pay for a quarterback. So whether Mahomes has done the right deal in signing such a long contract now and not tying it to like a percentage of the cap, in terms of like, right, the cap's going to be 100 million, so you're going to get 12% of that each year, and so on and so on. Whether that's the right decision is debatable, but realistically, if you're getting paid 477 million, how much more does an extra 10, 15, 20 million actually mean to you?
Not a lot. Anybody want to take a stab at naming the 5 quarterbacks who have signed contracts of this length or longer? There's only 5.
Well, I don't have a clue.
Matt Ryan.
No, they're all quarterbacks that have long since ceased playing.
I was going to say, it must be.
Culpepper.
Dante Culpepper is one of them. He did sign a 10-year deal at one point. Brett Favre.
Namath. Yeah, Brett Favre had a lifetime contract, didn't he?
Well, technically, it was a 10-year rotating contract.
How does that work out?
Drew Bledsoe.
Right.
Michael Vick.
That's it. I knew it.
Really?
Only one quarterback has signed a contract longer than 10 years. It's Donovan McNabb.
Damn it, I was going to say that.
Had a 12-year deal at one point. And how many of those players actually saw out the length of those contracts?
I'm going to guess none of them.
I believe Brett Favre might have been the only one. I don't think any of the others did. I think maybe Favre.
Yeah.
And therein lies the thing with Mahomes.
Yeah.
The chance of him getting to the end of this contract are virtually none, right?
Well,
He'll either be too good, so they'll give him an extension, or too bad or injured, so that he'll be cut or whatever.
I think that's the only thing that could happen is that they'll extend it again, like before the end of the contract. Because, like I said, I think after 2026, the contract gives the Chiefs a lot of kind of out on that, and it kind of favours the Chiefs more than it does Mahomes. So probably after he turns 30, actually he's probably got another good 10 years left in him, they might kind of restructure that contract.
Well, this contract takes him to the age of 36, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And when he's 36, he'll be an unrestricted free agent. There's also a no trade clause in the contract as well. So the only way he's leaving Kansas is if they cut him.
And Griff, in 2027, he's got a £49 million roster bonus that will come as a single hit bonus.
Yeah. So
he'll get paid $49 million in one go.
Yeah, his total cap hit because that's just his bonus. His total cap hit for 2027 is $59.9 million.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, I mean,
he's still like 7 more than Goff's on this year.
That it is only a small percentage of a larger amount of money than Goff and Wentz, isn't it? They're both in. What's his average yearly thing? Is going to be like 28 million.
Yeah.
And theirs is 27.
Is that this year or next year?
It might be this year. I thought it was over the next couple of years at least. It's
so I mean,
$1 million a year better off than them.
If you look at it, so his yearly cash like this year is only going to be 10.8 million, then it goes up to 22.8 and then 29.4. It's not really until you kind of get to that 2027 year 2027 where it goes to 59.9 million. Even the year before that, it's 41.9 million, which we thought this contract would be around about that sort of.
The average is 39.75 million a year.
Yeah,
across the deal.
They're just gambling on the cap increasing so much, aren't they?
Yeah. It's a fair gamble when the cap has increased a lot over the last 5 to 6 years.
He could be a generational talent, couldn't he?
Yeah.
Well, he is. I think there's only 2 concerns here. The first one being he was half an inch away from missing the remainder of the season last year with his knee injury.
You're half an inch away from a lot of good things, Michael. As are we all.
Far more than half an inch away from a lot of things. But if you look back on the moment where his knee was injured, like that had been hyper extended to such a degree, and you're talking about fractions, and he'd have missed the season. There's no Super Bowl win, so that's always a concern. And the second thing is, the last time we saw a contract talked about like this, that was this big, give all the money to one player, was when Aaron Rodgers won the Super Bowl, because they said he'll win 5 more in the next 10 years, and he's won no more in the next 10 years.
That's what they do with quarterbacks. Look at last year's highest paid quarterback was Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
It doesn't always guarantee success, but.
Well, it's the same with Russell Wilson as well. He was on his rookie contract when he won a Super Bowl, and
Flacco.
He has won a lot, but he's not won a Super Bowl since.
Flacco, yeah,
great example.
He got paid a lot of money, didn't he?
Do we think though that the biggest bonus in Mahomes' corner is being tied to Andy Reid?
Yes and no, because realistically, I can't see Andy Reid being still in charge of the Chiefs at the end of 12 years, given
his heart condition.
Quite.
If he gets COVID, he's got no chance.
Like you
can't McDonald's your way out of that.
But yeah, it's a benefit now, but is it going to be a benefit in 5 to 6 years?
I think the whole thing is too difficult to forecast. I'm not surprised by the money involved, but I am surprised about the length. But then I always am. So, right. Speaking of COVID, we need to discuss the impact of COVID-19 and.
Hang on, we were going to no. We were going to talk about something else first. We were going to talk about how this contract affects a few other quarterbacks coming into contract years.
We're going to bring those quarterbacks in at the end, as far as I've got on my list, and then go all the way back round. But you can do it.
I haven't got your list in front of me. You didn't email it to us.
I wrote it down.
All right, COVID it is then.
Do COVID next. Thank you.
I do love this organising the script on the podcast.
It's so difficult to organise now when I've already had to move room to room and then building, and and we can't all be in one room. We're going to do COVID. So COVID and the NFLPA. We're now hearing maybe no pre-season. Is this right?
It's what they voted for.
Hold on. Can we actually do this down the pub now? It allows up to 6 people from 6 different households.
I think we could do it in your pub.
Do it in the pub I'm in tonight.
Well, there you go. Maybe that's aren't you millions of miles away then?
Yeah.
Perhaps we won't then.
Still in a pub though. Right, NFLPA then.
So pre-season, there's not going to be one, or there is going to be 2 games, or because last week we were told they're going to announce a 2-game pre-season, and there was no announcement. This week I'm hearing no games.
Well, it's the difference between what the NFL are planning and what the NFLPA have voted for.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be the start of the start of a negotiation which hasn't happened. So, what does it mean? We'll see.
Well, if you look at baseball, I mean, they've ended up with a massively reduced schedule, haven't they? Down from 182 games down to 60 because they couldn't decide what they wanted to do. And even now, a lot of the players are saying we're not taking part. Various teams have had to lose sections of their playing staff because they've tested positive. I think in the MLS, Dallas today have announced that they're not taking part in the tournament because they've got too many players who've tested positive. So,
do you think they've jumped on it just from the fact that they didn't want to play pre-season anyway, really?
Well, there is a little bit of that, but I don't think that's the.
I'm not saying that's the driving factor, but the fact that they have the opportunity to show the league they don't need pre-season.
Yeah, but I think if you look at the 2011 lockout, which basically wiped out the whole of that off-season program, the injuries increased by 25%, versus any other year. So I don't think the NFLPA say that there's going to be no off-season, there's going to be no pre-season. I think they're almost looking to the NFL to make a recommendation, and I think the NFL, to be fair to them, are looking at other sports going, this is all going to pop. We actually don't know what to do. I think kind of when COVID first kind of arose, it was fine for the NFL because they could just sit back, watch what happened, and thinking, all right, by the time we get going, this will all be over. The way the US have dealt or not dealt with COVID has meant that actually the NFL now being plunged right into the middle of this because training camps are meant to happen end of this month.
3 weeks.
Yeah. So I think I don't think the NFL know what to do, and I can't blame them because I don't think anyone really knows what to do in the US at the moment.
I entirely agree with that. However, they have had months to at least come up with a handful of different plans, and it's like no one's bothered. No one's decided, right, in scenario A, we're doing this, in scenario B, we're doing this, and somewhere in the list of scenarios, there needs to be scenario X, we're not playing.
Yeah, but I think what you've got to remember is it's not just about the NFL, is it? Because they can say, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then the players go, I'm not doing that. And then there's a problem, isn't there?
This is what you're getting with the baseball and the NBA now, where quite significant players are saying, I'm not taking part. And
I'm not going to Disney World to play. Yeah, it's quite unusual.
If you find me, I'll sue you, is what they're saying. Because how can you find me when it's a personal decision in order to stay healthy?
Yeah,
and I think that's fair.
And every team has a right to. Well, every team has to make the workplace safe for employees to come back to work. Now, whether that's an NFL team or a meat packing factory, the place has to be safe for them to come and work. And if an NFL player comes in and goes, well, it's not safe, we're not testing every day, I don't know where this player's been or that player's been, you're in physical contact with players pretty much with most of the training sessions, so it's not safe, especially the amount of COVID that's currently in Europe.
I was going to say, I think we forget that they've got Uber Boris running that country. Exactly. Everything is basically carnage. He basically just cares about cash being spent, making the rich people richer, making sure that the old people who should be dying anyway die cheaper, and getting sports running again. That is what. If you don't think that's what Boris did, then Uber Boris is definitely doing that.
I'm with Gary on this. I think it's going to be pushed through and he's going to encourage him to play. However, I do think player power could come in here if they feel we're united enough to stand and say we're not going to play. They will go on strike.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I agree entirely as well, Gary, what you're saying. I think probably the biggest difference I'm seeing this year compared to previously, if you look at kind of when the whole Kaepernick kneeling thing kicked off, Trump was very critical of it, and the NFL sort of cowered towards him. I think that's just not happened this time. So I'm wondering if the NFL suddenly with a bit of a new backbone and probably don't really care now what Trump says because he's gonna
Well,
slate them anyway. Will they?
Michael Bennett's just come out, hasn't he, and said that you can't support Black Lives Matter and Donald Trump. The two things do not go together.
Yeah.
You can't do both. And I just, I think the NFL have put themselves in a very difficult position around lots of different things. But I think, I think there will be a stand against pre-season, but I think the regular season will still come back with fans because they're talking about waivers, aren't they? Now people just got a sign to say, "Here's a disclaimer: if I catch it, I catch it. I'll just take some anti-malaria drugs. Happy days." That's what the Donald said.
And people will go and sign up waivers. And
of course they will. Yeah.
If they were playing here, I wouldn't be put off from going because I'm not in a position where if I get ill, it's unlikely to adversely affect me. So that would be my choice. And I think that's why it has to be, a lot of these things now have to be down to individual choice. But in terms of a massive organisation, like I'm running a tiny little business, we've got to be super careful and there's barely any staff here. But in terms of massive organisations where training camps are 90 people strong plus 40 members of staff, that's a different thing. That can't just be down to personal preference where half the players say yes or will and half say no. There's got to be some enormous amounts of guidance.
You also can't do it if half the players say yes and half the players say no. What if all the offensive players come back and no defensive players come back? Like what do you practice?
Exactly.
So you just have to simulate the other bit, wouldn't you?
Well, what I'm saying is, as much as
just play Bulldog
choice, there has to be a united front that big, surely. And that is where there's always a problem. When you need that many people to agree.
Yeah, and I think the team's also looking to the NFL to kind of give them guidance. And it comes down to the fact no one really knows what they're doing. Like the NFL even need to make a decision, or at least put out some, like to your point earlier, Griff, at least put out some scenarios and go, right, this is what happens if COVID is rampant in your state, and this is what happens if generally you're all right. But
the NFL aren't in charge, are they? The governors are in charge, or the senators, or whatever.
I mean,
even Trump's not actually in charge of.
No, but there are states in the US that aren't particularly rampant with COVID at the moment. I'm thinking places like Minnesota, Illinois, perhaps. I don't know, but a majority of teams are going to be massively affected by this.
But are they all going to agree to just lose all that revenue and play at that disadvantage? It's just a mess, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is why somebody has to eventually say, yes, this is, or no, this isn't. And I think we're entering a position where it could very much be a shortened season, where they might say the first 4 games of the season are suspended, so we've got an extra month to see what happens. I really do think we could end up with a shortened season. And you can argue against it because you've got to do the right thing for the majority. It's like we said before, it's all right for rich players to go on strike, but the majority of those players have got mouths to feed and houses to pay for. And if they're really thrown up against the wall, they will say, right, well, I need my paycheck, can't put my career at risk, I've got to play.
Mm.
And what's the TV deal? Because you're going to end up, if you could end up like where like Formula One, where they're forcing a season through because they have promised TV deals, 16 races, and Premier League are playing the games, but because of the schedule beyond their feet, they are going to be paying money back to Sky and BT. So what is the bigger cost? Sporting terms, but then they're going to lose fans and lose home advantage, or are they going to lose X million from TV?
TV is king, isn't it? Always TV is.
And it's what's going to be the driving factor. TV.
Whose phone's ringing?
Someone in the background in the bar, I think.
Oh, Gary.
Might actually be the bar. Right. when I'm nearly finished Nearly finished
Gary,
my drink. When I disappear to go and get another one, I'll find out.
Maybe you could just ring them, Gary.
Does anyone think we see a full season?
No.
Possibly. We won't see. We might, just because cash talks, and we still have the Donald. At least he's going to be in charge for the start of it, and he don't give a shit.
It's not up to him.
It's not up to him. I think they're moving away from him. Everyone is distancing themselves from him
massively.
But it's a fair point.
Is that because Kanye's going to be president?
Would that be an improvement?
No.
He's still only just behind the polls, much like he was last time.
I can't see that happening. Right.
The Donald wins again.
Yeah, I think he's getting in again. Oh, never thought I'd say that. Right. Deshaun Jackson today is really... He's fucked up. I mean, I don't know how else to word this better, but basically Deshaun
Let's let Sam Gowie say it in public.
Yeah. In a bar, would you like to read out the Deshaun Jackson tweet?
No.
No.
Look,
I also
even Gary's got more sense than Deshaun Jackson.
We've all had it. You know, someone sends you a quote from Hitler, and you have that moment where you think, do I put this on social media? And of course, you go yes. You don't even bother looking if the guy who sent it was an anti-Semitic. You just go, nah, I'm posting that. Sounds motivational.
I think we have, actually, John. I'm not sure about that, but... Yeah.
I mean, it's not a good move, is it? Especially when the owner and general manager of your team are both Jewish in origin.
Yeah, I mean, you are literally biting the hand that feeds you in this case. Quite hard. All right, fair enough. If it was a mistake, it's a fucking stupid mistake to make in the first place. He's now got to go and apologise to those two individuals, and it's not like Deshaun Jackson is Julio Jones or DeAndre Hopkins anymore.
Because they can say what they want, can they?
No, I'm saying it's not like he's a star player. If I was him, I'd be fretting for my job. He absolutely can't say what he wants.
He is pretty loved in Philadelphia, though.
Yeah, they were pretty poor without him.
And this is the city that Denzel Dims from the Jets described as the shittiest city in the States or something, didn't he? This week.
I don't know. I mean, we've met.
That did happen.
You know,
that's an actual stat.
Does anybody think maybe just ban players from social media, not just in the NFL, in all sports?
No.
What would you talk about?
Yeah. I don't think you can't for starters, but
would you not think teams could say, if you want this massive contract that pays you loads of money, we're banning you from social media, like in Formula One, where they're not allowed to do any other sports; they're only allowed to do Formula One.
It's because
you can. Is what I'm saying.
What they are also getting paid money for their social media.
A lot of money.
Which is a conflict of interest then, so maybe it is of a benefit to look into this. Does it? Do you remember, who was it years ago filmed inside the locker room?
Beckham. No, it was Antonio Brown.
That's it, Brown.
How is that okay?
Yeah, but
that's just training.
If that ever came up in a contract, the players would release it going, well, they're restricting my freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's different to a lot of other things.
I'll tell you what, though, it does bring us back to the Mahomes deal, because they reckon he's going to make another $100 million just in endorsements as well, don't they?
He could make more, surely. Like, when you look at things like LeBron's Nike deal, he's making $1 billion in a lifetime deal. If Patrick Mahomes is the face of the NFL for the next X amount of years, he can be making a lot more than $100 million. But anyway,
I mean, Beckham made millions, and he's got a funny voice as well.
Yeah.
No, I don't think they'd ever write that into. I think social media now is too big that they'd never write that into the contract. They'd get whatever team tried to do it would just be pulled over the coals. Something bad.
Yeah, but sooner or later, somebody has to take responsibility for some of these things. It's not the first player we've seen slip up.
Well, the
It's for
players
the
will
teams
take
to train them. They should be socially media trained, so they just don't know. They know.
I think it should just be
Hit the
socially
quote,
trained.
I won't
Yeah.
retweet this.
I think they could just not be idiots. Like the quote was from Hitler. It's a stupid quote to make. Even if it wasn't from Hitler, it's a stupid quote to retweet or re-quote. I mean, it's just idiotic. Why would you ever say anything like that in public? Whether you're Deshaun Jackson or some tramp living on the street, it's just something stupid to say. There's no excuse for it. If I was the Eagles, I'd be getting rid of him and just saying, look, sorry, mate, you were injured most of last season. We know you're loved, but come on, you're out.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think certainly he's going to be on a very short leash is what I expect to see. But whether they'll get rid of him or not, only because they were so poor without him.
If Antonio Brown can be fired twice last season, Deshaun Jackson can be fired this year. He's not that important to the Eagles.
He's not. You're right. They were poor without him last year, but they have signed a few other wide receivers now, and there's no guarantee he's going to be back to vintage Deshaun Jackson next year.
Well, he's 33. I mean,
Exactly.
Granted, it's not,
How old's Larry?
Yeah, but Larry's decent and is never injured, apparently.
He's never injured. That's the main thing. I don't know. Have they still got Nelson Aguilar? Did they let him go?
No, he's gone to the Raiders.
Oh,
Yeah.
God. Why would you do that to yourself?
So now you signed Sanu, didn't you? Was it Sanu?
Yeah, that was a mistake. They've still got Alton, Greg Ward Jr. Don't forget him. He was brilliant. And JJ Arthega-Whiteside.
They got Marquise Goodwin as well, who's a Deshaun Jackson type player. So, but they've got speed there, and they drafted Jalen Reagor as well. So,
I don't think we'll have to wait very long to find out. If they're going to get rid of him, it'll be done in the next 48 hours.
Yeah,
he's apologised. He will go through training. He'll be there.
Yeah, I think so. Fair enough. Right, let's leave stupid players there for a minute. And on to players who maybe didn't perform as well as they should, but have still managed to get themselves a new contract. Olivier Vernon, restructured his deal in Cleveland today after only putting up 3.5 sacks last year. What is the end goal? Is he really good enough? Because I thought Cleveland were looking at Clowney, but now they've guaranteed him $11 million. It seems unlikely that they sign Clowney as well for the money he wants.
He was supposed to get 15, wasn't he, this year?
Yeah,
so he's just lost $4 million.
They can go for Clowney, but Clowney has no desire to play in Cleveland.
Who does?
Hang on, how many sacks did Olivier Vernon have last year?
3.5.
Yeah, Clowney had 3.
Clowney's never had 10 sacks in the season ever.
I'd say that the benefit of having Olivier Vernon there is that you've got Myles Garrett on the other side, so you can't, even if you're gonna try and block Garrett with 2 other players, you've got a legit pass rush on the other side who can get to the quarterback. That's the benefit of it. They're not just putting a nobody on that side of the line. And if they can get Clowney, even better. But Clowney has to go somewhere.
Is Clowney better? Is he the player you're most surprised hasn't been signed to?
Yeah. I think it's only the fact that he can't travel around and meet teams that he's not been signed.
But is it the numbers that put people off? Like you say, no double-digit sack seasons. He never puts up the monster numbers, but everyone feels he's terrifying. So,
he might not get the sacks, but he gets pressures. So, yes, I know I mentioned he only had 3 sacks last year, but he gets pressure on the quarterback, which forces mistakes. So, yeah, against the 49ers last year, he was amazing in the game in San Francisco. So, he does that job in terms of getting to quarterback. He's never been the dominant player we expected him to be when he came out of college. Like, everyone watched that massive tackle he put on that kid in college and thought, this guy's going to be... He's never been that player, partly because he's never had to be the man in Texas, in Houston, where J.J. Watt was the man, and partly because he's been injured quite a lot.
I just want to stop that there. Gary, are these people in the pub actually sitting at your table? Sounds rather like they are. Have you invited some friends over? That's much better. He's been muted. I love it. That's much better. Yeah, okay. Well, I like Olivier Vernon. I think he's a good player. I was just a bit surprised that Cleveland was so keen when I feel a better player is out there. But, fair enough. If that's the point is good. If Myles Garrett and he are both on the field together, that's a very dominant-looking pass rush.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think that's why you pay the money for that type of player, is that he gives support to the rest of the team.
I don't know what Gary's playing at now. He seems to have wandered off into his own world.
He's getting a beer. He's getting a beer.
Shut up.
Does anybody have any other player news they'd like to get to before we get to today's extremely serious conversation?
Rex Burkhead. He signed a revised contract as well. So his salary now drops from $2.5 million to $1.05 million with a $500,000 signing bonus and some incentives as well. So that gives New England $981,000 in cap space.
Don't know what we're supposed to do with that.
Who the hell are you playing? I don't understand.
Tom Brady.
Still.
Yeah, we're still playing Brady for another couple of years, aren't we? Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not a good position. I wonder what they're freeing it up for. Like, who are they expecting?
I have no idea. Like, realistically, you're not going to get very far with an extra $1 million in cap space, are you?
Well, that's what I mean. Is this the first of many restructurings?
There'll be some 34-year-old wide receiver you'll pick up for somewhere in for a 4th round pick later in the season, just to you'll try and bring Martellus Bennett out of retirement or something ridiculous. But yeah,
I don't know. I could see some players getting traded away from New England, and some players get cut. In terms, Belichick's always the type of player who he'll get rid of a player a year too early rather than a year too late, and it will free some cap space, and then you'll make a massive acquisition of some sort.
Well, like Cam Newton.
Well, I was thinking Davian Clowney.
Well, can you imagine that? The anger that would be on display on this podcast. I don't think so. I'd like to get a tight end. That'd be quite nice, but whatever.
Only 3 tight ends out there anymore. Well, you could probably get one from the Bears.
They've got many.
And Njoku is asking for a trade.
Yes, apparently Count Dooku is asking for a trade. Oh, that's better, Gary. You joined us with the silent background. and a fresh. Yeah, I mean, I think the Count would be good on the Patriots, don't you?
I think anyone on the Patriots will probably improve that team now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a weak spot still, definitely. So, it's something we need to work on. Right, we have to get to the serious conversation for the week, which I'm fairly sure which way this is going to go, but there's a few points to pick up on. So, over the last week, the corporate sponsors of the Washington Redskins football team have basically pressured the team to change the team name because they feel in the modern climate, Redskins is not a suitable nickname or team unity name to have for your team. This is FedEx, Pepsi, and Nike. Are the 3 major players who've basically had a lot of investors in their firms say, we don't want your brand that we invest in associated with a team that we feel has a racial slur for a nickname.
Well,
and despite in 2013 Dan Snyder saying we will never, ever, ever change the name, and he actually said put it in capitals, they are now conducting a review into the name. And from listening to Ron Rivera, it seems likely that they are going to attempt to change the name as soon as possible. Whether it's too late to do it for this season, that is what I've been reading today, that because the schedule is about to be announced, they can't necessarily do it for this year.
What? That's absolute... No. We've written it in that Excel sheet now. We can't delete it. We can't possibly do a find and replace.
I wrote it in pen. I can't rub it out.
Like that's lame. I think with everything going on in the US when it comes to racial equality, I don't think the NFL will turn around and go, actually we appreciate the gesture, but you got to do it next year. And that's just ludicrous. It literally is a case of going into a few spreadsheets and clicking find and replace, and then replacing some logos and what have you. I think that's absolute. I cannot see that not happening. If they're serious about changing that, it's been going on for a number of years. It's been pressurized this last few weeks, like you say, with the likes of FedEx, Nike, and Pepsi kind of starting to pull money out of the team. But there's a reason Dan Schneider said, a few years back, we never ever changing names, because he was under pressure to do it then. It's been a slur since they were first formed.
Yeah.
And it should have been changed years ago, if you ask me.
Does someone want to unmute Gary?
It wasn't me. I didn't mute him. I don't know how you do mute him.
I muted myself because the guys were like, I don't know, like clearing out an ice bucket or something crazy. So, it just went a bit mad. There's some, I think there's like one group of guys here on a golf trip. So they've just got the poker set out and they just came and sat next to me. So it's all just kicking off, I think. It's like the night's about to begin.
Sweet. But yeah, what these corporations have done is force his hand on something that should have been done, quite frankly, years ago. And now, if Dan Schneider does change the name, it's going to be because he cows to these corporations. And if he doesn't, he's just going to look like a massive twat.
Yeah. The other thing is that
he should have done it years ago, and it could have been. He could have portrayed it as a thing for good, rather than just because he had to.
It's also worth noting that I think it's either the CEO or the owner of FedEx is also a shareholder of the Washington franchise. So if he suddenly if he properly, and I mean, they sponsor the stadium, it's a FedEx field. If they suddenly up sticks and go, yep, we don't want anything to do with this anymore, that's a lot of money that leaves.
That sponsorship's up for renewal, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
Right. There you go. And realistically, in this day and age, is anyone going to take that sponsorship up with them still called that?
So there's no doubt that the name is going to change. And I'm actually in agreement with you guys that I can't see why it can't be done in the next week. And the speed of modern industry, bearing in mind how many industries need the injection, I don't think there's any reason why shirts, sponsorship stuff, everything, merchandise can't be produced in time for the start of whatever season.
Well, apparently it's going to be Warriors, isn't it? That's what I've heard is the front runner.
So there's two. There's Warriors and Red Tails.
And what, sorry?
Red Tail.
Something to do with the local RAF base, isn't it?
The Red Tails were the Tuskegee.
Oh, yeah, they were.
Who were the bomber escorts flying P-51 Mustangs. Now, apparently they're in a discussion with the surviving members of the Red Tails to make sure that they, as black airmen, basically, are okay with being used as a mascot, because whether you like it or not, you're still moving from one group of people as a mascot to another group of people. I like the name Red Tails. However, I'm not sure moving from one racially based thing to another is a good idea.
It's a fair.
Why yourself in that position when in 10 years' time that could be a controversy again?
Yeah, and that is a fair point. I think the difference is that the term redskin is a racial slur. It's in the dictionary as a racial slur. Whereas I think to celebrate the Red Tails, who did a lot of good work during World War II, is probably something different. But I mean, it's a fair point. I mean, how aside from Washington, how far does this go? Do we see the Chiefs change their name? Do we see the Cleveland Indians in baseball change their name?
I've got the list of teams that might have to change. So, as you say, the Chiefs, who technically were named after a local mayor who got the team to turn up in the city. He was known as Chief, whatever his name was. But the Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium, more importantly, they have a pony that rides around called War Paint, which some people are claiming might have to go. Bear with this. The Cleveland Indians in baseball, they've got rid of their chief.
They've got the mascot, Wahoo, wasn't it?
Wahoo went a few years back, but it's the use of the word Indian, apparently, might have to change. Then you've got the Atlanta Braves, who are also based on this image, although they've never quite as tightly associated themselves with the imagery that surrounds it, but the name is still associated. And then in the NHL, you've got the Blackhawks, which was a tribe. In the college football, you've got the Florida State Seminoles, which was a tribe. And if you want to expand it slightly further to large franchises named after indigenous populations, in the NHL again, you've got the Edmonton Eskimos up in Canada, all of which are named after indigenous or based on indigenous tribes. Where do you draw the line? What's offensive and what isn't?
Well,
what I'm getting at.
You should start with the Redskins, because the Redskins is egregious. It's the other ones you have. There's a conversation to be had. You talk to people who are from those backgrounds.
I think
we don't have Wahoo the Indian as a mascot, but has anyone read Showdown about the history of the Redskins?
No.
Basically set up by a KKK member, and the last of the teams to integrate black players into their team, because racist. And I think JFK had to get involved to get them to integrate. So there's a history there, and you just think, why steer into that?
Well, they've removed the statue of the founder, haven't they? Is it Marshall?
Yeah.
They've removed that entirely from the stadium, and he's gone from the Ring of Honor and everything. I have my own personal opinion on that, which is you cannot sterilise the past. Because regardless of him as a person, if he founded your organisation and you're sticking with that as an organisation, then there's still some respect there somewhere along the line is due to that person. You have to educate
celebrate it.
We have to educate rather than like you say, celebrate, I think. But you cannot sterilise the past. And these things, it doesn't narc me when we're trying to sterilise things. I don't think that's the right way. Education is always preferable. The other side of this.
Did you see that John Wayne Airport might have to be renamed, though?
There's loads of places that are going to have to rename, apparently, because a lot of them are named after Confederate generals. A lot of military bases named after Confederate generals that they're going to rename. And this is why you get a lot of people that will vote for the Donald, because they feel like their heritage is being wiped out now. And there's no way of having this conversation without being slightly political with it, because whilst we're only looking at sport, it unfortunately comes with all the extra bolt-ons. And people, as much as woke or enlightened people would say, look, this is just sensible, let's just keep progressing forward, there are a lot of people who would say, this is my heritage that you're now trying to remove, and I don't like it. Why are you doing that? And it's not okay. And it just depends who you are. Like, it doesn't affect us directly because we're not American in any, like, we're not Native American or immigrant American. There's nothing about us. So we're perhaps not educated to fully conceive this problem.
Look, our podcast has been running longer than the Confederacy. That is a fact.
It is a fact.
As Bill Belichick's World and the Snap, we have been running longer than the Confederacy.
Are you suggesting that you are the Jefferson Davis of this podcast?
I'm just saying, why is there so much celebration of this? It's 4 years, the Confederacy.
Yep.
My emo phase lasted longer than the Confederacy.
Still is, looking at your hair.
I'm going back into it. Yeah.
Don't for a second think that I'm not even attempting to take sides or justify. I'm just saying, having looked at what people are putting out there and reading the arguments, I can see how this is affecting people on perhaps the slightly less woke side of the argument, because they are saying you want to remove our history and we're not comfortable with that. That's why there was so much hullabaloo about NASCAR getting rid of the Confederate flag. We think that's perfectly sensible. Why do you need the symbol of something that was so, as to use John's word, egregious? But in the states where NASCAR is popular, those people say, I had family that died for that cause. And you're removing it.
But it comes back to what we discussed last week. You can remember history. We're not wiping out history. No one's learning textbooks or kind of saying, no, we're not going to teach that in school anymore. They're still going to teach about the Confederacy, but they're still going to teach about the Civil War in the US. We're just saying don't celebrate it. Don't celebrate something which was so, bad. Quite frankly, you don't see statues like when during the Iraqi war, when eventually Saddam Hussein was toppled and they pulled down his statue. I don't remember anyone moaning about that. Like that's not. And the same goes for there's no. I won't say there's no, but I'm presuming there's not very many statues of Hitler in Germany, and there's probably not very many statues of Stalin in Russia.
Not anymore. No.
Yeah.
No. I agree with you. I'm just saying it's deeply rooted in some people's history that they will automatically defend it regardless of whether it's right or wrong. Is where I was going with that. And they are the people that then put other, usually white people, into power.
Yeah.
Is that fair? I think that's a reasonable thing. So what do we think? Do we think the Redskins should steer away from another culturally appropriated name, which I think the Red Tails is slightly asking for trouble? Do you just go for a complete clean slate, change the colours, change everything? Because Snyder is saying he wants to keep the colours as they are, and I think any association to the existing name makes it slightly less worthwhile. It looks less forthcoming, like you really.
I don't think you'll change the colours, will you?
No, I see where you're coming from, but I think that might be a step too far for most the owner and B all the fans who still have shit. Shirts cost a lot of money.
But if you're taking the fans into consideration, most of them would say to you they're not bothered about the name because that is what they're saying.
I think they're bothered about the colour.
Yeah.
About the what? Sorry.
About the colour of the shirt.
Yeah. But most of them are saying that generally they don't find the name a problem because they are fans of the team. So if you're taking the fans' feelings into consideration, where do you draw that line?
Well, you draw the line on the fact that you're not making a racial slur with the name.
Yeah.
The colour isn't a racial slur.
No.
But if you're going to be the Warriors,
Yeah.
it should be red and white stripes, Norweb across the front, in proper Wigan style.
Yep.
Otherwise, you just keep. I
did see a mock-up of the Redskin Warriors helmet with a great big spear on it, which was slightly concerning.
Well, this is the thing. Like again, it's not for my liking. If you're going to change it. Draw a line. That was the past. We're changing it. And
I did see a great thing in the
Griff wants them to be called the Washington Lobbyists.
There's lots of things you could call them, but that probably wouldn't be on my list.
The Onion did have a thing where it goes, Washington to change team name to the DC Redskins.
There was one that our friend Duncan put out there this week that he'd seen that they maybe just become Washington football team. I don't like that. I think it's just too bland. Just don't. I didn't like it when the MLS all started going towards the more generic European football team.
What about just Washington State?
No, because they're not in Washington.
Washington State.
Well, no, but it sounds cool.
Yeah. Does it matter? Does it really matter? Like, if they've got a name or not? It's not like you turn up to the thing and go, guys, we're playing the Chiefs tonight, and that's a really scary name.
I don't know.
I was feeling up for this until I realised they're Patriots.
I don't know.
You say that, John. That colour has a massive influence on sport.
Yeah, the whole branding element is sort of massive point within the NFL and how they sell jerseys, how they sell replica kit, scarves, hats, whatever. They probably, you can look at the Cleveland Browns and say, well, they haven't really got a brand other than Brown. They seem to do all right, but everyone kind of then literally shits on them.
Yeah.
They do all right by being the only team to have never made a Super Bowl or hosted one.
Well, that too.
Because everyone wants to be able to leave the city in their own car afterwards.
Factory of hate.
But yeah, whatever they do, it'll be better. I'm sure, but you gotta hope. But yeah, it is Dan Snyder, But
feels like this might be driven by Ron Rivera now really saying, look, because Dan Snyder's not even in America. He's not in the country at the moment. So Ron Rivera is heading this, and he is saying, I'm pushing to change it before the start of the season. And I like that. I mean, he is also one of the minority coaches in the league, don't forget.
Yeah.
I think he is probably more invested in this process than maybe other coaches have been in the past with the Redskins. I think he actually has a voice that maybe matters in this process.
They did issue a press release earlier this week announcing that they were looking into the name change, which had 5 sentences, and in it mentioned the Redskins 10 times.
I mean, they don't do themselves any favours, do they?
They really don't.
Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know how they can be conducting a review. Surely it's just, we're changing the name, we're picking one. That's what they should be doing.
I think that's the review. They're actually picking which name to pick. I think the decision to change the name has been made. It's like, okay, what are we changing it to? That's the review.
Okay, I hope so. I hope so. Regardless of anybody's view of the argument and regardless of where you feel lines should be drawn, at the end of the day, we've said it earlier, money talks. And if you can't make money out of your team because you can't sell merchandise and you can't trademark the name, it's time to get a new name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
although when Ocho Cinco, when he changed his name legally to Ocho Cinco, Nike refused to give him jerseys because they'd already printed Chris Johnson on the jersey. So the only way they'd give him more was if he went and bought back the 10,000 jerseys that they printed. I mean, it's a different thing. I just saw it the way.
Quite like it. Yeah, I mean.
But yeah.
No. Does any of you actually know why they're called the Redskins or not?
Well, yes, sort of. You want me to tell you?
Well, if you don't, I just wondered if they knew.
Well,
I don't.
They claim it was done as an honorary thing to the Native Americans.
Is it not because I thought it was because they moved to Fenway Park. They were the Boston. They didn't want to be associated with the Red Sox, so they were called the Redskins.
Well,
were they not in Boston first?
Yeah, they were in Boston first. Yes, absolutely. They were the Boston Redskins. That's quite possible. All I can find is that the name was chosen specifically with honouring the Native Americans. However, we now know what we know about the owner. You know, something doesn't quite add up. I've always said, in my opinion, you don't name your team after something you find derogatory, because who would do that? That would be ridiculous. So there is that, but things changed over time. It may not have been how it is perceived now. And so occasionally you're going to get caught out, and it's like players who have to apologise for tweets they made when they were 10. Like, at the time, maybe it wasn't so much of a deal, but depending on your standing and how times change, things are different, right?
What about Washington Monuments? I quite like that one.
Yeah.
That one, yeah.
I quite like the Washington Maroons, which everyone said we could just easily change to morons, which I quite liked. Yeah, there's been a few decent suggestions. I quite like that mock-up of the Washington Red Pandas. That was quite nice. So, I don't know. I mean, one other final point on this before we move away from the subject. When you are the owner, founder, and, main person in charge of a team, what right do you have to name it and do with it as you choose? We spoke about the fact they were the last team to integrate. Whose choice should that be if you are in charge?
Owner.
The owner's choice.
Well, it's not the owner's choice, but the buck stops at the owner.
Yeah, I'm not saying where does the buck stop. I'm saying whose choice should it be?
Well,
because if you own something,
it was the owner. The owner was quite clearly he stated he wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
So, but it's like I guess in over this side, Rangers and Celtic were defined by religion, and Souness, the manager, decided he was not going to pick no longer not pick Catholic players. The buck will stop somewhere, but it's management. But yeah, I guess it depends club by club.
Fair enough. Right, that's the serious bit over. Now,
thank God.
Yeah, it's difficult to navigate, but I think ultimately you just have to be honest and have your say and see that the sensible thing now is to just move on from that and change the name. So Joe Burrows, Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, and who was the other one? Love. Jordan Love.
Oh yeah.
We're all this year's first round draft picks. I want to know where you see that going for each team. Let's have a quick discussion. What do we think the best and worst possible outcomes are for this coming season? And then take a look back at the large 2018 quarterback class and see how they're getting on. And have a look, who do we think is going to be comparative between the two? So let's start with Burrows, number 1 pick to to Cincinnati, sorry. Just because I'm used to Cleveland having the number 1 pick. So he's gone to Cincinnati. He's replacing Andy Dalton, who, well, he's middle of the road, but he's the most successful quarterback the Bengals have had. So what do we think his chances of excelling in his first year will be?
Slim to none. And that's not to say he's a bad quarterback. By all accounts, he's a very good quarterback and stands as good a chance of having a good NFL career as anyone. But I don't think that team is ready to make that leap into kind of playoff potential kind of team. I think he could have a first season very much like Peyton Manning's first season, where he just threw a ton of interceptions, got beaten quite a lot, and they end up picking quite high again. But if you then have the talent like Peyton Manning to then turn it around and be brilliant, then fair play. You'll take that one bad season for a career of genuinely breaking records.
Did anybody see anything from Zach Taylor to think that he can be a decent coach?
No.
Anyone that isn't Jim.
Sorry?
Anyone that isn't Jim. Because he's acting no. John says no. Gary?
No.
Because I think that's where the hamstringing begins. Is I didn't see a single thing out of Zach Taylor to make me think, okay, he deserves a number 1 pick quarterback. And that's a concern.
Well, I saw a lot to kind of say that Zach Taylor deserved the number 1 pick in the draft.
Yeah.
This franchise is it's hamstrung by ownership and how they structure the whole team, not just the playing staff. I'm talking about the backroom staff as well. They've got the smallest scouting budget of every team. I don't think they would even have like a director of player personnel or any kind of director of scouting whatsoever. So it's not just about kind of Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow. It's about what are they doing behind the scenes to make this whole franchise better. And I don't think they're doing enough.
Who's the best player on that team? Mixon?
AJ Green, if he's fit.
Is he though? Is he fit?
If he's fit, he probably is the best player on the team. Like if he's fit and back to what he was before he was fit, then he's undoubtedly the best player on that team.
Yeah.
Or Geno Atkins.
What good is a wide receiver as your best player if your quarterback isn't able to get you the ball?
Yeah, well, this one can.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
As long as the O-line gives him a few seconds.
And I'm not sure they will. The O-line isn't good. It's disappointing. I don't know. I feel this is another. What did they win last year? 1 game?
1 or 2.
1. They were 1 and 15. If they win 4 games or more this season, they've done very well. It's a poor team. It's a very poor team. And that shouldn't be enough for Zach Taylor to keep his job. They got rid of Marvin Lewis, who's been to the playoffs a shed load of times. They may not have got anywhere, but at least...
It depends how he gets on in the first year with his quarterback, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
If they, like you say, if they're winning 4 games and then they're losing maybe another 6, but they're close, tight games, which they could have gone, it could have been a coin toss, you'd probably say you'll keep him for another year.
You reckon?
Yep.
Maybe they will. I don't know. I was extremely disappointed, and I don't know. These young coaches. All right, Sean McVay had 1 good year. Kyle Shanahan's done very well, to be fair. But a lot of the young coaches it just doesn't really work. It's like first year players. Once you've got film on them, they're not as good. You know, you get the odd Pat Mahomes, but not many.
Yeah, but I mean the thing is, to your point, he didn't really show much last year. Now he's got a new quarterback, got a few new pieces in that team. They look a little bit better than they did this time last year. Maybe he can do better. We'll see.
They could have added John on the O-line and it would look better than it did last year. In all fairness.
I'm a generational talent, mate.
Yeah, at what? Not football. Okay, so Justin Herbert then to the Chargers. I mean, I like Justin Herbert. I think he's a really good player, but it's another team that looks to me like it's set up to fail the quarterback.
It's whether he starts, isn't it, I suppose? Or
Yeah.
whether they go with your mate, Tyrod.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a case of, a bit like with Baker, I think Tyrod starts a few games and then you bring Herbert in. I just don't think the team is surrounded with enough talent to help any sort of improvement. And
The fans will get them through, though, won't they?
Yeah, they won't notice there's been a lockdown, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I've got no idea.
No, no idea at all. Herbert was good, right, in college, but he was on a downturn coming into the draft. Is that a concern? Is that more of a concern than the team being poor? Is it the fact that he wasn't on the up, he was on the downswing?
No, I don't think so.
No, the concern is the team was on the downturn the whole of last year.
Yeah.
It's...
Well, the reason I asked that, and we're going to get into the quarterbacks from 2018, but the year before he was drafted, Sam Darnold was not great. 2 years before he was drafted, he was brilliant. And it looks to me like players that come in on the downswing, they're just not starting in a good position. And maybe teams are blinded by the fact they've seen one great year out of them in college. They ignore the bad signs that follow that.
I think it's confidence, isn't it? If you're, we see in sport, confidence does so many amazing things. And if you are coming off not the best year in college and then you go into a poor team in the NFL, you've got to do something pretty special to turn that around quickly, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as well,
otherwise, you need somebody to give you time and trust, and that doesn't always happen.
No,
and
that's very true.
It's that X factor of a coach who knows what to do with you. We'll get on to the 2018 bunch, but the one who's done done the most has landed with a coach who has molded the team to his capabilities rather than plopped a bloke in and hoped. Well, he was good in college. Just see him just lob the ball.
I agree. Okay, Tua coming off his injury, going into the Dolphins. I'm sure they want him to start the season, but I think Fitzpatrick at the moment, with no pre-season in view, I think Fitzpatrick's starting the first half a dozen games of this season. And I don't think they're massively improved when Tua comes in, just because he'll have had no time to adjust, no time to properly get back into the flow after the injury. Fitzpatrick was phenomenal last year, whether you like him or not. In an awful team, he willed them to some victories. Like, he was brilliant. And I think it would be grossly unfair to judge Tua on whatever happens this coming season. Even if it's good, it'd be good because teams haven't seen enough of him to get enough film. And if it's bad, it'll be because he hasn't had any opportunity to rehab properly and get on the field. So I'm not sure you're going to learn a lot about him this coming season.
I think. Go on.
You go.
I was going to say, I hope they do sit to it for the whole of this year, to be honest with you. You're right. He's had no preseason. He's coming off a very major injury. They've got a decent backup. Well, they've got a decent starter, I think, in Ryan Fitzpatrick. And it will give them another year to kind of build that offensive line and make sure the offensive line is decent for him when he does take over the following year. I think the worst thing that could happen to the Dolphins and Tua is if they do exactly what the Cardinals did with Josh Rosen and put him right into the firing line with no decent offensive line in front of him. It's realistically, again, we're going to talk about it later, but it's destroyed Rosen's career. So let him get into the facility at least, learn what it's all about at an NFL level, and then just come in for 2021.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I think that's the best route to take with him.
The league table doesn't lie, apart from in the Dolphins, because let's not kid, they were abject.
We thought they'd go 0-16 after the first 4 or 5 weeks.
The fact that they've got wins is a testament to good coaching and some players playing out their skin. But that was the worst squad
Yeah,
You
remember
don't want to put Tua in
No.
that at the moment.
and they've got another 2 first-round picks next year, so it's another opportunity to bring in 2 quality players, as well as kind of oodle cap space, I imagine. So, let the team just get together this year, and then under Fitzpatrick, add more to the team next year, and then give Tua his kind of go.
Do you think there's much to be said for the fact that Fitzpatrick, maybe as opposed to a player we're going to discuss in a minute, will be probably quite willing to spend time with Tua, coach him, bring him on, be okay with being taken out of games towards the end in order to let the youngster play? Like, I think he's more open to that than a lot of sort of superstar quarterback would be, because he's already been around the league. He's earned his money. We said when we started this 5-6 years ago, whatever it was, well, we probably won't see him next year because he'll be out of the league, and he's still going, and he's still going to be starting this season.
He's like Josh McCown in the sense that he knows he's not, a blue chip quarterback that's going to go to the Hall of Fame and owns loads of records. He knows he's not that. It's the extent you look at him at Tampa the year before last, where he kind of took the piss out of himself a little bit. And I think that kind of attitude, and knowing that he is nearing the end of his career from an age point of view as well, I think he'll happily kind of take Tua on and kind of teach him the ropes. He seems like that type of player anyway.
That's what I think. Finally, then, from the draft class this year, Jordan Love, the surprise selection by the Packers because they didn't want to help out Aaron Rodgers. Firstly, does anyone even think he sees the field this year?
No.
Yes.
Like it.
Rodgers will get injured, or he'll finally have to go into rehab, and he'll have to play.
I think there's an extremely good chance that Rodgers gets injured and we'll see some Jordan Love this season. I really do. And if he's terrible, it's going to be just dramatically bad for that team, because they pissed off Aaron Rodgers. And if he comes in and isn't at least reasonable, then what's the point of having pissed off your star player? Anyone? No?
No, there's no point.
There is no point. It's like we said it last week when we were reviewing the NFC. I don't understand the strategy that's happening in Green Bay at the moment.
Is there a strategy happening in Green Bay at the moment? I'm not sure there is.
I don't think there is. No.
It seems like
there's a power struggle. There's not a strategy. That's what it is.
The only reason I'd have understood this is if they'd have then suddenly traded Aaron Rodgers for a host of picks. Like if they'd have said, right, we're rebuilding for this following season, we're trading Aaron Rodgers to somebody that needs a quarterback, and we're starting again because the coach can't get on with him. But they haven't said that at all.
Well,
we're building for the
future.
future.
At the end of this year, like if it all goes tits up, to your point, they could say, right, see, Aaron, we're gonna send you off to the Raiders for another 2 first-round picks, because the Raiders seem like that type of team that would do that, and give up far too much draft capital to bring in someone like Aaron Rodgers for 2 years.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I don't know. I think he's under a phenomenal amount of pressure for a player that they don't really want to have to play this year, because Rodgers gets injured now every year. So the likelihood is he's on the field at some point, and could kill his career immediately if he's terrible. And also, if he's good, how annoyed is Aaron Rodgers going to be? He's not going to give him any help, is he?
No,
so
can't see it.
I do wonder what impact it's going to have on the team as a whole. Like, it can't be good for team unity to have warring quarterbacks.
He wasn't injured last year. Started 16 games.
He did. He was carrying injuries in some of the games, but he didn't actually miss any.
He was hobbling for about 6 games, wasn't
he? Yeah, he was.
We saw he's played 16 games.
Yeah.
16 games.
Yeah, but with DeShone Kizer as your backup, you hobble onto that field.
Oh, yeah.
Well, luckily, DeShone Kizer is no longer the backup, so, So we've mentioned the 2018 class. We'll start with Josh Rosen, mainly because Jim had already pointed out. So Josh Rosen was seen coming into the 2018 class as the can't-miss quarterback prospect. He'd been brilliant.
Most NFL ready.
The most NFL ready. That was the quote. He's now started maybe 16 games in 2 seasons. It's not a lot.
16 games.
16 games in 2 seasons. And I believe he has the worst passing yards and completion percentage out of any player to have started 16 games of quarterbacks over the last 2 seasons. But he's also been on 2 terrible teams. So how do you judge Josh Rosen?
You have to take what he's done, unfortunately. From all accounts, he's not the best of teammates. He's not, and this came out in the draft that his personality was a bit off, shall we say? And it seems like that's kind of carried through to his career in the fact that the Cardinals couldn't wait to get rid of him. Like, I know Kyler Murray is a special talent, but they still didn't have to take a quarterback. They had a first-round quarterback sitting there ready to play, but they took Kyler Murray, and that, as well as being a good talent, I think it says as much for how they felt about him as a person, and they got rid of him. They didn't even keep him as a backup. They got rid of him.
Yeah, that's got to be a concern. Other people have got to look at that and think there's got to be a problem here. That can't be normal. So, like you say, the personality thing was mentioned in the run-up to the draft, and I think sadly it shows he is clearly a talented, gifted player, but maybe the persona isn't there. And unless you are Aaron Rodgers, you're probably not getting away with that personality.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. So let's move him to one side. That's the best we can do with that.
As many teams will.
As many teams. Okay, I'll move up the order that I think they're in then, and you can shoot me down. I think Baker's next. I don't think he's done enough with the talent. I don't think he's done enough with the team. I don't really get the Baker train. I never really understood it in the first place. I definitely don't get it now. What do we think?
Completely agree with you.
I think at points he's shown more than Darnold.
Yeah. But at the same time,
I think that's fair, but do we not think he's shown more than Darnold with a far better surrounding cast?
Darnold had Robbie Anderson. He should be given a world of sins.
But it's true. You compare Robbie Anderson to Beckham and Landry and
exactly
Njoku, yeah.
For now.
Yeah.
So for me, Baker is the most disappointing. If you say Rosen, we thought there might be problems. Baker is the most disappointing, surely. And year 3 now represents the you've got to do something, or we have to start looking again. Surely.
This is make and break it year, because he's now got the offensive line in front of him. He's got another offensive-minded coach as a head coach. He's still got Beckham, Landry, and a few other toys to play with. If he doesn't do it this year, then I think you're right. I think
What constitutes success this year? Do they have to be in the playoffs, or do they just have to win more than 8 games?
I think they have
to win more than 8.
Yeah, I think they have to be competitive. They have to be relevant come December.
Yeah, I think they've got to be in the hunt come the final week.
You could get 3 teams out of that division, couldn't you?
Yeah, you definitely could.
Definitely could. I think if they're still in the hunt in week 16 and 17, then they've done what they need to do.
For Mayfield, though, he's now on his 4th head coach.
Yeah, it is, and that is the only factor
But he's also a massively arrogant bellend.
Oh yeah.
Who keeps saying he's going to do all this and do all that, and he's toned it down a little bit, but you've got to deliver, haven't you? If you start doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The mouth is saying things, cashing checks that he's just not delivering. But
I don't know how you got that euphemism quite so wrong there, John.
I know.
His mouth is writing checks that his actions cannot cash.
That's the one.
Is what you're looking for, and that brings me to Sam Darnold, who is the opposite, and he's saying he's going to set the world alight. And yes, he's been either really, really good or really, really awful, all in the same game quite often. And he's seeing ghosts and all the other things. But look at the team he's playing with, and look at the personality of a player who's clearly just trying to bed himself in. I think there's still a lot more to be extracted from Darnold, and I have more hope for him than I do of Baker.
I do as well. And he's only 23 still. He's still ludicrously young for a starting quarterback. He's younger than Joe Burrow. To put that in perspective. He's not had any help whatsoever from that organisation, really. For the last 2 years, he's not had anyone to pass to. He's not had an offensive line.
No running back.
No running back. Okay, they got Lev Bell, but Lev Bell's a shadow of what Lev Bell was, partly because of the offensive line. So, he's not.
And the coaching.
And the coaching has been pretty.
So, I think Adam Gase, it's bust, right? It's done.
Oh man! Can we get through any podcast about you ripping Adam Gase?
I just can't stand him. I think he's terrible.
I hope that's what Darnold's sake, because I think you're right. Darnold seems like a decent guy. I want him to succeed. It's not like Baker where you're Don't like that guy. I'd be happy if he failed. Darnold, I genuinely want to see him be successful.
Yeah, I think so as well. I don't see anything to dislike about him, and I genuinely think the team is letting him down rather than the other way around, where Baker's not had the greatest of coaching, but sometimes Baker is letting the team down. I don't see that with Darnold.
To show you how bad the Jets are, Cincinnati's won last year was against the Jets.
And I think if you put Darnold in the Patriots, in 2 years, Darnold would be an amazing quarterback.
Yeah,
I agree. This is very rare that we all agree, by the way. This is quite pleasant. I quite like it. We need to get Paul on to tell us we're all wrong. Okay, so continuing to move up the list, a distant second, but Josh Allen, whether you think he's any good or not, he's winning. He's putting up the numbers.
Distant?
He's distant second to the
I
consensus.
don't think he is.
You don't think so?
No.
You think he's comparable to Lamar?
John really doesn't. He's gone high pitched and everything.
Yeah, you went really high pitched
I
there.
like it, but tell me why.
No. Well, look at the. They both aren't the best throwers. They're both good on their feet. Lamar is better running, but let's not forget he can only really throw to tight ends. Lamar is good. I think Josh Allen is he's nearly there.
I think the biggest difference between the two is Josh Allen can throw to tight ends in the next state over as well.
Yeah.
So I think I was the one most favouring Josh Allen when he was in the draft.
We've never heard about this prediction.
Listen. And I'll tell you why I've got him second behind.
I'd love to see his podcast notes. Slag off Adam Gase. Mention that I said Josh Allen was going to be a good quarterback. Move on to the next point.
Tell Gary he's a cunt. That's the next one, right? So all I'm going to say was I feel a bit like John that they're very, very similar. It's just that in every single category, Lamar is that little bit more advanced already.
No.
He's playing in a much better team.
Dynamic. That's the word you're looking for.
Is it a much
more
better
dynamic?
Team? The receivers on that Ravens team, it's not great. It's not great.
I would take Josh Allen as a passer over Lamar Jackson. But I think Lamar Jackson's probably the better overall quarterback. I wouldn't be the one I'd want to build my team around right now.
Yeah.
I reckon in 5-6 years, maybe when he hasn't got quite as much athletic ability because he's been hit several thousand times and he's 5-6 years older, I'd probably say Josh Allen might be the better quarterback.
I think that's fair. I think Josh Allen was very harshly dealt with by the media when they lost in the playoffs because he didn't have a good game. He had good moments and awful quarters in that game. He made some appalling decisions, and that is the main reason why I think he's just developmentally a little bit behind Lamar in the way he sees the game.
You've got to remember that
John Harbaugh. I don't like the coach. I don't like Sean McDermott at all.
Lamar Jackson was able to run a triple Heisman play. Remember?
Yeah.
When you talk about the quality of player around him, what did he have at the Bills? Frank Gore or something?
David Singletary.
Don't do Frank Gore.
John Brown.
No, but I'm not dissing Frank Gore.
Cole Beasley.
But I'm just saying, Lamar has definitely got a better set around him, but I still think Lamar is a slightly more dynamic player.
Yeah.
Lamar has gone Harbaugh. That for me makes a massive difference as well. I really do think the Harbaugh factor is huge. So maybe I'm being unfair in saying the gap is so big. I certainly concede that.
And as well, we made Allen choke in the playoffs. Lamar's choked twice.
It's so true. It's very true. Okay, but so John, are you the only one who would take Josh Allen tomorrow to build your team now? Because
I'd take Lamar, but if you offered me Josh Allen, it's not like I'm going to cry. I think Josh Allen's a very competent quarterback.
Would you take both of them over Daniel Jones?
Yep.
At the moment.
Yeah, okay, as would I. That's fine then. And what do we think Lamar has to do to be successful this season? Does he have to get to the championship game?
He has to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like he's unfortunate in that he came into the draft a year after Mahomes, and he's won the MVP in his first full season of starter like Mahomes. So he is going to be constantly compared to Mahomes, and he's not going to get close to that Mahomes contract.
No, but do we not think this is a bit like, every year Dan Marino did something amazing, but he never won the Super Bowl? Lamar could be stuck a bit like that.
Potentially, yeah.
A bad time to be.
To my point earlier, I think he relies too much on the running game, on his own personal running game as well.
So in that case, this is where I was going with Lamar. Cam Newton, is he just the new Cam Newton, where you're never quite going to get over the line because you get injured and you get worn down and you can't really rely on your passing game in the long run? And then you end up at the Patriots.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got the scheme to go with that, then fine. But the problem with Carolina lately is they've not been able to seemingly get around the fact that Cam is less mobile, and that's probably where you had the difference between Rivera and Harbaugh. Harbaugh seems to be better at changing his team to fit his quarterback.
Yeah. To move from Joe Flacco to Lamar is possibly the biggest change you can make.
Exactly, and yeah,
makes a big difference, I think. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there. Which is there any other quarterbacks then that you want to mention that have been caught in between? We're going to talk about the contracts in a second, but Pat Mahomes obviously wasn't. He's from the year before, but he didn't start, so he's in a similar position. He's got this massive contract. What do we think is going to happen with these third-year quarterbacks? Who's getting picked up on their contracts first? Is it Lamar?
Yeah.
Where does he fit in the pay scale?
I think it's between Lamar and Josh Allen. To my point, I don't think either of them are going to come close to what Mahomes got, but I think Lamar, you could see hitting kind of the 30 million a year type contract. Josh Allen, I think a lot depends on what happens this year.
It's going to be a case of either pay him and stick with him for another 3 years or move on again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's just what the contract is going to reflect. And what does it do for Dak? Because he's the other one who, I know he's been around a year, even longer, but the contract is there, something's got to be done, and the Cowboys need to make a decision. What do they do? Because I don't think Dak's worth that sort of money.
He's not, but it now makes what he was asking for look quite cheap. And that what was he after 35, 40 million?
Yep.
That now becomes much more realistic based on the fact that Mahomes is getting paid 45 million a year or whatever it might be. And yeah, you can say, well, Dak isn't Mahomes, and that's absolutely right. I think, how in previous years, like the highest paid quarterback has always been the one who's been paid the latest.
Yeah.
Garoppolo was a highest paid quarterback, then Stafford, and then it was Aaron Rodgers, and then it was Matt Ryan, and it was Russell Wilson. I think we could be going a few quarterbacks before we see anyone break Mahomes, because all the general managers have to do is say, look, Patrick Mahomes, 45 million. He was league MVP in his first full year, and then he won a Super Bowl. Dak, you've not done that either of those things.
Done for me lately, yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're going to see a few kind of get close to it. I think Dak is one of them, and I think Deshaun Watson's the other one who's interesting. He was obviously picked picks later after Mahomes. I think those two are the two to watch to see what happens over the next couple of weeks.
The thing with Dak is, it's not like Dallas are ever going to be picking in the top 10. So unless they can pick up a quarterback who's going to be better, what is the cost of not picking up Dak and then bringing someone else in? It's probably going to be cheaper to keep Dak.
Well, and Andy Dalton's the cost. Like,
I've said this before. I don't think the drop off is massive.
No,
I think. Well, if you're going to do it, you probably do it this year when there's no fans, so there's potentially there's no one to annoy. But I think it's if you're getting rid of Garrett to say it's okay because he's not done well enough, and then you're thinking it's okay after 6 games we'll go with Andy Dalton.
Well, the thing is, if the Cowboys were going to do it, they should have done it before Dak signed the franchise tender, because now they're locked in. They could have revoked that tender before he signed it and gone, do you know what, we're too far apart in the contract negotiations. We can't see ourselves coming to a figure where we're going to agree. So we're just going to go with Dalton, and we're going to strengthen the team elsewhere, and we won't be a team that relies too much on the quarterback. And it worked for some teams. But now he's signed that franchise tender. I think they're a little bit locked in, and the power now lies with Dak.
Would either of you, any of you, I don't know whether Gary's still with us, he appears to have disappeared off my screen, would either of you actually be comfortable building a team for the next 5 years around Dak?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't get it.
I think
he's won lots of games. I just don't get it. I don't see.
He's like Alex Smith, isn't he? He's not.
Yes.
He's a very, very good game manager. He does not turn the
Gary
ball.
would.
Gary would, yeah.
He doesn't turn the ball over, and he does a couple of things quite well. But you can win with Dak. I think they've proved that. He's got to the quarterbacks, the playoffs a couple of times, and he's been successful in the playoffs. So he's not been that far being a championship game.
I've just quickly written a list of players that I would rather have than Dak. And I didn't write down Kirk Cousins because I'd still rather build a team around Dak or most other players than Kirk Cousins. I still don't get it. And I just wanted to make sure Gary knew that I was also going to slag off Kirk Cousins today. Because
what about Philip Rivers?
No, not Philip Rivers. That's Gary's job. Thanks, Gary, for joining in only by text. That's very good of you. I'm aware that I'm stupid, but I would take Dak over definitely any day.
If you had Kirk Cousins behind Dallas's O-line,
he'd probably be brilliant. Yeah. He's just another one that I just don't get. I've never done it, and I'll stick with that. I'd rather have Matt Stafford than either of them.
Yeah, I would as well.
Yeah.
Even now, even after what he's been 10 years in the league, I still think he's probably the most underrated quarterback because he's on a perennially awful team. And I think
you've mentioned Rodgers is always injured. Stafford has not finished any of the last few seasons. He's always injured.
But do you think if the Lions were in contention, like for a playoff place, would he try and play through those injuries? I think the fact that they've just been pretty bad for the last few years means that I'm injured. We're not going anywhere as a team. I'm not going to risk myself anymore.
Wasn't it a back injury, and he had a broken hand?
I think it's only the last 2 seasons. Prior to that, he'd not missed a game for like 8 years.
Oh yeah. But
I understand what you're saying. The point is, he's become slightly more injury prone. I cannot, for the life of me, think the name of the quarterback that finished the season last year for the Lions. I just know he was terrible.
I can't remember.
Anyone? Huh?
Was it Jeff Driscoll?
Maybe. I don't know.
The fact that none of us can remember says it all, really.
Well, that kind of says it all, like you say. I cannot remember what the guy's name was, but he was terrible. I just think without him, how many games would they have won in the last 5 years? Half? Less than half the games they've won? Like, he just drags them back from the brink every time. So,
David Blau.
Exactly. That name again is David Blau. Yeah. I mean, it shows you the drop-off when he's not on the field, because they are poor. And the other player I want to mention in the midst of this before we move to the end of the show is Mitch Trubisky. Does he even start, let alone see out the season as the starting quarterback of Chicago?
He may start because of a lack of pre-season. I don't think he finishes it though.
6 games in, Nick Foles is starting for that team, I reckon.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a massive upgrade. Hey, Gary's back. I don't know if it's a massive upgrade in terms of player, but I think it's a massive upgrade in terms of what people think of the player. And that, like Gary was saying earlier, is a big confidence boost. This is a guy who won a Super Bowl against the Patriots. He must be better.
He also lost his seat to Gardner.
He got injured.
Yeah, but he then came back and then got dropped for Gardner Minshew.
That is true. And that is going to always be the story of Nick Foles, is he's not really good enough to start and he's too good to be on your bench. So he's going to be one of those players, but he's better than Mitch Trubisky. Isn't he?
Is he?
Yeah.
Well, I
He
don't know.
is when he's in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be a thing. But what has Mitch Trubisky done for anyone?
Well, he's not got anyone sacked yet, has he?
He had
But
a
it won't be
good.
long.
Yeah, he got John Fox sacked. He had a good second season, but his third season was just terrible.
It was only good because it compared more favourably than his first season. And
Yeah.
last season was dreadful.
Yeah,
Like, really bad. A proper backward step.
I don't. Well, to your point, I don't think he'll see out the season, and I don't think he'll get a contract renewal unless it's like ludicrously cheap.
Well, if he does get one, it's going to be like when the Jags gave Blake Bortles a massive contract and really fucked it. Because it would just be a ludicrous thing to do. He might have 4 games on a hot streak, and then it'd be terrible again. And that's what got Bortles into a massive contract.
Yeah.
Bortles took the Jags to conference final, didn't he? Or
No, that's defense.
championship game.
The defence did, and he was there.
Yeah.
As well, it's
Time Man of the Year.
Bortles' contract was always timed so that they could get rid of him at the end of the year. It wasn't that they had a massive contract. They could. It was the contract of this is your last chance.
Yeah.
I don't know though. The Jags are just stupid, aren't they?
The Jags are awful.
They've got no cap space at all now. They've got no players.
It's a very poorly run organisation. And sometimes I think the Bears are a bit similar. They're not a well-run team. And to move up and give up what they gave up for an untested player who's the same age as Darnold, isn't he? He'd only started the same number of games in college as like one other player had ever come in with fewer games. It's like they've done nothing to help themselves, and he isn't good enough. So you have to draw the line. Is it Ryan Pace, the general manager?
Yeah.
You've got to draw the line. Foles isn't the long-term solution, but you let him run it for a year and you bring in someone else. I was surprised they didn't draft a quarterback. I really was. I thought they would. Even like in a later round, but they didn't.
They're the sort of team you'd expect to take Jameis, really.
Yeah. He'd be an upgrade. He'd be a huge upgrade. Don't you think?
Well, I don't know.
Jameis over Trubisky?
There's just a lot of interceptions there, Griff.
Yeah, it's a lot of touchdowns as well.
It's not like the receiving cast in Chicago is as good as it was in Tampa.
No, of course not. But still, Trubisky's one of the worst 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, probably.
Jameis is better than that.
I don't know. You lose games by giving the ball away. And Winston gives it away 30 times too many.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
At least 20 times too many.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Jameis Winston. I grant you, but I would, if I'd got to pick one to start a single game for me tomorrow, I'd pick Jameis.
Yeah, but they haven't got to start one game, have they? They've got to start like,
don't know,
16.
there might not be any games. I don't know. I just think Trubisky extremely disappointing for me, and I can't get past that. I wanted him to be good, and I just don't get it. I think he's done at Chicago. He'll end up as a backup somewhere else.
It's the hope that kills you with Jameis, because you get 5,000 yards, you get 5 interceptions in one game. It's
so you get your eyes lasered.
Yeah, exactly, and end up on a better team.
Do you want to tell me how many interceptions he's got over his first 5 years, by the way?
104.
No, not quite that many. He's got 121 touchdowns, 88 interceptions in 5 years. Christ, that's a lot. And 50 fumbles. That's 138 giveaways in 5 years. That's not ideal, is it?
That's more than his touchdowns, isn't it?
But yeah, exactly. It's not. It's definitely not ideal. But Trubisky is just one of those continual disappointments. He must be better. He must be better. He must be better. Oh, actually, no.
Yeah, but you like the whole like chest out, big beard, glam rock Fitzpatrick style of play.
Oh yeah.
Outfit, whatever. Some boring bloke who's just a bit average. You're just not a big fan of, are you?
No, because it doesn't make entertaining things to watch, does it?
No, well, doesn't mean he's actually got the skill set to be, the worst player in the league just because he's dull.
No, that's true. For the record, Trubisky 21 fumbles, 29 interceptions, 48 touchdowns. So he's also given the ball away more.
That's roughly the same as Jameis's numbers, just scaled down.
scaled down to 3 seasons. Yeah, he's slightly behind in interception. He's quite a long way behind in interception rate. But
And touchdowns, though, so it's just a scaled down version, isn't he?
yeah, it's
Like
not,
you say, he's just a dull version of Jameis.
a dull version of Jameis. like you say, I can't get on board with a dull. If you're gonna be balls out, you've got to be Jameis or Fitzmagic. That's basically how it works, right? So, right. Has anybody got anything else they'd like to bring up before I bring this to a swift conclusion?
Nope.
In that case, I'm bringing this to a swift conclusion. Thanks for listening. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.